Hello and welcome to Fish Talk TV. I'm Charlie and I'll be your co-host along with Mark and Joe. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's all good to see you. And Fish Talk TV, for the next 15 minutes or so, we hope to keep the information informative, fun, and we hope to bring you things that will make your fishing experience a lot more fun. Guys, it's good to be back on the air. I thought it might be a good idea to take a minute and talk about some of the history about where this Fish Talk comes from. Originally it was Fish Talk Radio out of WVLT out of Vineland. And we were on the air for about 30, 35 weeks, something like that, Mark, wasn't it?
Yeah, during 2001.
2001 it was, as a matter of fact, right through the September 11 era, actually, huh? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it seems like yesterday, but it's not. But here we are today, and people are now, instead of listening to this on the radio through the technology and so forth, you see this on the World Wide Web. Well, that's pretty cool. We think that we are going to have some interesting things, and we're going to be a little bit different from the other shows and other websites. Both this website and the show is meant really to be about fishing for the rest of us, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. It's not for the hardcore guys, because we're not hardcore. I think we would all agree that as soon as fishing becomes serious for us, it's time to stop, huh? Why?
We haven't already had a day job.
That's right. We already have a day job. That's right. We don't need any more hard work. We don't need any more aggravation. And we are weekend warriors whenever we can get out. And the weekends, unfortunately, don't come around that often. We hope that this website and this television show is devoted to you, the average guy like ourselves, who gets out when we can. So with that, guys, we want to talk about certain topics that we thought it might be of interest to you. First thing I think we want to get into, as the flounder season is just opened, and the water, though, is pretty cold. Down at Cape May over the weekend, I was out on Saturday, the first day of flounder fishing. It was 52 degrees we were registering.
It's a little chilly for flounder.
Yeah, that is. Great for striper, though.
Well, if you're fishing for winter flounder, it's fine. The summer flounder or fluke, it should be up into the 60s or higher.
Yeah.
So anybody who's catching anything right now is probably snagging them.
There was some reports of stripers off the right out front of the Atlantic City Inlet. They said they also got a couple of keeper flatties. However, I didn't see them. So it's like that. The farther away from the dock you get, the bigger the fish gets. That might be the same kind of story. So, but at least the weather's here, and we can start, huh? But however, when you're catching, especially this year, you guys are big flounder fishermen. You've caught an awful lot of flounder. However, a lot of them are short, aren't they, Mike?
Yeah, there are a lot of shorts. Being that the limit is 18 inches in New Jersey, we catch probably sometimes 10 fish for every one keeper. And with that, 10, maybe 20, 30.
Well,
it depends on the day.
You thought about the story. You had 70 or 72 fish. And you had 4 keepers.
Yeah, that was a
nice ratio, Mark.
Yeah. We don't try to brag too much on that day.
Well, it was a lot of catching and very little keeping.
And with that, a lot of releasing. And with that, we try to, as best as possible, release the fish back as easy and gently as possible, so that the fish will survive and come back next year, hopefully at size, so we can catch it. One of the techniques that we use for releasing the fish gently is, for example, I use barbless hooks. Basically, just crunch down the barb with a little pair of needle nose, and it allows you to release the fish easier. It does, of course, require you to keep tension on the line as you're pulling the fish up, because if you leave any tension go, the fish will probably spit the hook.
Mark, what would you say the amount of fish that you lose because there's a barbless hook?
I would say probably 1 or 2 out of 10 I might lose, but at the same time I feel that the fish itself has a much better survival rate using the barbless. What I usually do is when I bring it up to the surface of the water, I can see basically if it's a keeper or not. If it's a small size, which a lot of them are, I won't even bother bringing it out of the water. I'll take my needle nose, go over the bow of the boat, grab it by the shank of the hook, flip it, fish goes on its way. And at that point, I think that that fish has a much better chance of surviving till next year and getting bigger for us.
And Mark, you know, one of the key points there is, as you said, is not only the barbless hook, which keeps that barb from pulling out any of the important structures of the mouth, but also you're keeping the fish in the water and not really taking it out of the water by keeping a little tension on it.
Yeah, I've seen sometimes, Joe, guys using, you know, rags and
that's right. Rags are what I've seen also, and what that does is that actually takes off a very valuable mucus that the individual fishes produce to keep themselves free of bacteria and other types of organisms that would otherwise be able to get through their skin. Like our skin is our protective layer. Since they're in an aqueous situation all the time, they need something a little bit more than just water.
So when you use a rag, you're really wiping
You're wiping away that slime or film, and the fish will eventually reproduce that film, but in the meantime, it's like going outside without a coat on. You now are exposed for that length of time to other organisms that may be in there. In addition to that, while you're holding it, many times you're holding it out of the water for quite a bit of time. When you take it out of the water, imagine yourself going the other direction. Imagine you're being held in the water for the same length of time that you're pulling it out. And
it's stressful on the fish.
It's very stressful on the fish. So what Mark is talking about, using the barbless hooks, or like you use, Charlie, with the circle hooks, or what I use, which is a straight Shaughnessy hook, but using the needle nose pliers by keeping in the water, we reduce our mortality and keep our releases much more viable than I'm sure many other people. Although we're not strictly catch and release, we're catch and keep if they're large enough. Since the 18-inch limit keeps most of our flounders smaller than that, it ends up to be many times we're doing catch and release most of the day.
Yeah, well, last year, for example, Joe, that day we caught 70 fluke. Well, we had 4 keepers that day, so that means we released 66 fish.
That's right.
And I believe with our technique that our 66 fish have a much better chance of coming back next year.
Most of them do. And again, Mark, many times it's associated with that lack of handling.
Right.
Well, that, you know, you guys are fishing in some very narrow areas when you catch this fluke. You're fishing in, the Wreck Inlet north of Brigantine, Langston
Brigantine Channel, Oves Channel, Golden Thoroughfare, Bessie's Channel, some of the shallower bays like Reed's Bay or Lakes Bay.
Well, do you rely on strictly the tide to drift those, or I'm sure the wind's got to come into a factor?
Well, for us, wind's a big factor, and as you know, I dislike the wind to the highest degree. I cannot stand the wind. One reason because it picks our boat up, which only has a foot draft, and carries it away. We'll be driving, and we don't need an engine if there's enough wind. It'll blow us around. So what we do is we try and utilize the wind to our advantage by picking those channels that have the tide and wind in our advantage. We try and go with the tide and with the wind. So what we do is we pick, if it's a southwest wind, we pick a channel in our area, maybe Weakfish Thoroughfare, and catch it on an outgoing tide. If it's an incoming tide with the south wind, we pick another channel.
So you're paying a lot of attention then to both the combination of tide and direct wind.
Tide and wind, because we have narrow channels, deep center waters, but very shallow edges that we can get run aground fairly easily. We have to keep an eye on it.
Do you stay idle, or do you turn your engine off?
We rarely have the engine running. We're always on.
Really?
We never have our engine on, other than to move from place to place.
Well, I've been out fishing with these guys, and they fish hard, often and long. Joe's the type of guy that when the sun's going down, he says, "No, just one more hour."
Well, we don't even need a boat in reality. We have a log that can stay upright. We can stay on it. I know long enough.
Well, you guys have caught a lot of fish over the years, and I've seen the log that you keep, which is kind of unique. I know you've been doing it for a long time. How long?
We've been keeping a log in the Brigantine area for about 11 years.
So you've got a lot of data.
Every time we go out, we record the time we start, the tide we start, the temperature of the water, the temperature of the air, the direction of the wind, and we start off that way.
One of the future shows, I think it'd be a great idea to bring that log in and to show the folks out there at home what that looks like, and talk about in depth the reasons for it and how you used it. I know that the The state of New Jersey, of course, has gotten together with fishing regulations with NOAA to do some kind of this recording process with the average recreational fisherman. However, I don't know how effective that's really going to be. They take your name, phone number, and so forth. They give you online. You have to go to the website. You can print it out right there online. There's no cost to this. Where other states, you've got to register on a federal basis, and they're now charging, I think it's $15.
The federal government is, that's right.
Where the state of New Jersey, you get it for free, as long as you're a New Jersey resident, of course. But with that, the purpose that I read about was that they want to reach out by telephone or by walking up and down the docks and gather this type of information. So you already have a lot of this data. I'm surprised that, of course, they're not letting anybody know necessarily, except now it's only exposed to everyone, that you have this kind of information. That can be very, very important, as the recreational fisherman really takes a beating when it comes to laws and regulations. The commercial guys really seem to get all the goodies because they have the folks in Washington who are sitting there.
Well, they have that, and also they've been keeping these same logs all along, whereas we recreational fishermen are primarily just doing it from the seat of our pants and by way of hearsay.
So
the only way to make sure that you actually have something to bank on to prove that you're doing as well or as worse as they are is have written records.
So it's going to become more and more important to do that.
I would think everybody should do it.
It lets me and Joe brag back and forth of who got the best weekend or the biggest fish or the most fish that weekend.
Well, the one nice thing that these fellows fish together all the time, they invite me from time to time to join them. I fish out of Cape May, and I have a 25 trophy center console. And the nice thing is, see, when I catch fish or don't catch fish, as the case might be, I can go back and lie, and they can't disprove it.
Yeah, well, I like a clean boat when he comes back, so we know he's lying.
Well, the idea that the fishing regulations here in the state of New Jersey, it took them a long time to come out with the flounder regs this year. It wasn't until the very last minute that this thing was brought forth. I wasn't even sure they were going to make it at all. Now they've extended the season, changed the bag limit, and the size.
The size is still 18 inches, the same as last year.
However, we're limited to 8.
Down to 6.
6.
Yeah, down to 6, 18 inches. So, you know, I think it's even more important that you make sure the fish that you release them back well, because it's getting harder and harder to get keepers anymore.
Well, you know, we talk about the story that we fished weak fish for many years, and it was not unusual to see tide runners of 30 inches or more. When's the last time you heard of one here in South Jersey?
Yeah, very long time.
Years. You know, it makes it to the front of the fishermen when you do see.
This is the type of thing that as average fishermen, yourself and ourselves, we have to be concerned about, because these fish are disappearing. And we've got to do whatever we can to protect our fishing area and the fishing species altogether. We don't want our fisheries to collapse like they did in New England, you know, and wind up limiting ourselves with what we can catch even more.
Well, I remember back in the 70s where we had the striper moratorium. My father was catching stripers up till the 70s, and then they put the moratorium on for how many years?
5, 7 years? What's it?
I don't know. There's a number of years to allow the population to come back. And they also took many of the states took the striper out of the commercial fisheries completely. And today there's only three states in the northeastern United States that allow commercial fisheries for it. So by doing so, they've allowed that population to come back. We can do the same thing with others. You may not see it happen with weak fish because there's something else happening with weak fish that we don't know about. But if it's caused by overfishing or poor fishing techniques, we can remedy that. Maybe not this year, next year, or a few years later, but it can be remedied. If the remedy is caused by something beyond that...
what might that be?
Well, predation by another fish, change in the location of the stock, the loss of the stock. There could be a number of things, but primarily predation and changes to the breeding pattern.
Well, we know this is going to continue to happen, and we, as recreational fishermen, have got to be aware of all these things. And hopefully that's what Fish Talk TV will be about as time comes about. We're going to try to produce these shows every week or every other week. We hope you're going to stop back at fishsj.com as often as possible. And with that, we wanted to use the tabs up above See how we practice that. And you're going to find some really nifty information, as well as good information for weather, tides, and ocean conditions. So we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Charlie.
Keep your eye on the water.
Bye-bye.
And
Here we go with Fish Talk.